Good morning and welcome to my channel. I'm Gypsy Jan and I live in my car. This morning we're taking a drive 6 hours towards the south. It's kind of a sad affair because I've sold my kayak. So I'm just here at my storage unit loading it up and we're ready to go. And there it is. Well, it's a sad parting. My beautiful kayak that I worked so hard on, I have sold it. Well, I'm glad I was able to get one paddle in the other day. It kind of made me had my doubts about whether or not I should actually be selling it. But yeah, I can make another one. Maybe. It was a lot of fun making this one. I think that was the most part of the fun. Kind of sad but sweet. Sad but sweet parting. So we're off. 6 hour drive south of here. And I'm meeting the buyer tomorrow morning, or no, tomorrow afternoon. So in no big hurry. So selling my kayak is actually harder than I thought it would be. My life is taking a different direction. And I can always rent a kayak if I ever want to go. And I will. I mean, one of these days I'd like to get a paddleboard. Oh, sun's bright. Oh, the weather can't make up its mind whether or not it wants to rain or shine. So we are on our way to Orangeville. That is where I have agreed to meet the buyer, because I'm not going all the way down to Mississauga. I'm staying out of the GTA, which, for those of you that don't know, the GTA is the Greater Toronto Area, and it is horrendous to drive in. I avoid it at all costs. So we're off on another adventure. I'm actually excited about this little trip because it gets me away from the bay for a little while at least. I'm glad it's going to a good home.
We'll definitely be using it, enjoying it.
So my kayak is sold. It's gone. I've got very mixed feelings right now. I'm very sad to see it go because that was my baby. I worked really hard on that thing, and I started building it in 2017. And it took me about 2 years, only because I didn't have a shop or a place to work on it, so I could only work on it during the summer. I started working on it in the summer of 2017. I was renting a room, and my landlady graciously agreed to let me work on her back deck that was covered. How it all started was I had contacted a guy on Facebook, a Facebook group, that had offered to hold a course to build kayak. And I immediately signed up for it. He had originally wanted $1,200, and he would bring you to the point of skinning, but he was supposed to supply all the wood, steaming, cut out all the blanks for the ribs, supply the combing, and the skin. And then at the point where you had the shape of the kayak with the ribs and everything in, at that point you were to take it home and skin it yourself. I was the only one that took him up on his offer, and he tried to back out of it, but I said, look, you advertised and I really want this kayak. So I gave him a deposit of $600 to cover the cost of wood and everything like that. And what really, really irks me is that he used cheaper cuts of wood. So I was a little bit disappointed. But I figured, well, you know, it's going to be covered by the skin and protected, and so I guess any wood is pretty good. And for a couple of weeks, he never contacted me, never responded to any of my emails or phone calls or texts or anything like that. So I was getting really, really frustrated because I had given him $600, and for about a month and a half, he was not responding, and I was ready to call a lawyer or something, call the cops, because he had my money, but he hadn't done anything. So finally, I went over there, and I had to go several times, and at the time I lived in a town just outside of Kitchener, and he was in Guelph, so I had to go several times and bang on his door, and finally get him to set a date for this build. And he didn't have his heart in it from the get-go. Why he took my money is beyond me. But he never really seemed to be that enthusiastic about it. And he didn't work on my kayak in between or anything like that. He waited till I was there, and he didn't make it convenient for me. I kept going after him and making, dates. I will be here Saturday morning. What time do you get up? That type of thing. I mean, he was very cordial throughout the whole thing. I ended up leaving with a kayak frame that was held together by zip ties, and I had no combing. He had promised to make the combing, and he still hadn't even ordered the skin. So I thought, you know what, I'm not giving him another dime, because the whole idea was $600 to get started for the materials and the build, and then when I was taking away the kayak at the point where he said I would be finished, I would give him the rest of the money. And I thought, I'm not giving you a dime more than that $600, because he didn't follow through with it. And he's kind of silly, because he could have made $1,200 had he just ordered the skin, which cost me $100, and finished the combing, which I was kind of disgusted. I don't think I'd want to put that on my kayak anyway. He was making it out of plywood. I was not impressed at all. I went home with this kayak skeleton, I guess you could say. And my landlady graciously agreed to let me finish it on her back deck because she wasn't using the back deck for anything. And the condition is that I would have to clean up the deck after I was done working and put everything aside so that if she wanted to use the deck, it was available. And I didn't have a problem with that at all. When I got it upside down on sawhorses, it was shaped like a banana. Like it had this major curve in the keel. I knew then and there that I had to backtrack and redo the whole thing. So that's exactly what I did. I basically took the whole kayak apart and re-engineered it, which made it about 5 inches shorter, which I didn't mind at all because it was originally 16 foot, so it was about 15.5 when I was done. And that's how many inches I had to take off of it so the keel was straight and it would track straighter in the water. Mind you, a kayak zigzags through the water anyway, so it's not that, not that big a deal. But it was a lot straighter than when I started. And the other thing that I did while I had it apart was the bow and stern boards. He had made them out of plywood. And that's not appropriate for a boat that's going in the water, especially since the fact that it wasn't even marine grade plywood. So I bought some cedar, a cedar plank actually, and I cut it to size. I basically used his plywood as a template for the bow and stern. And I redid it all. And I was frustrated with it because I'd never built a boat before, so I was going blind. And he obviously didn't know what he was doing because as I was building it, I was talking to a guy that builds skin-on-frame boats for a living, and he's down in the States, and he and I had a lot of conversations, and I sent him a lot of pictures, and he was saying everything that was wrong with the boat, and I'm going like, oh my God, what did I pay for? But I figured, I'm going to go ahead with it because I always wanted a skin-on-frame, and I could actually say, from the point of bringing it home, I had to redo it, so I basically built it. The only thing he did was cut the shapes and do the steaming. So I rebuilt it the first summer that I had it. That was in 2017. And then I had to put it away for the winter. And in talking to a kayaking friend, I had asked her if I could use her garage, which was like a huge, huge garage. I asked her if I could, bring my kayak there and skin it, and she was asking me, well, how long? And I said, well, I don't know. I had to drive an hour to get to her and an hour home, so that was going to limit my time. Plus, I work from Monday to Friday, so that left me weekends. And she agreed, and I really appreciated it. And I got as much done on it as I possibly could. But I ran out of time that following summer. And I ended up leaving it at her, in her garage, stored with the skin half on. It was sort of just sewn on a little bit real quick. Just enough to hold it there, basically. And the following spring, when the weather warmed up and her garage was warm enough to work in, I made arrangements to go down there and finish it off because I couldn't let it sit there anymore. I wanted to be able to use this thing. So it essentially took me 3 years to complete, because once I had the skin on, it still needed to be painted, and by this time I was up north. down south. So I picked it up from her place, threw it on the roof of my car, and brought it to my campsite. And at the time, I was living in a tent in a campsite because I was waiting for my trailer to come in. I had ordered a small trailer to live in, and I was waiting for that. So in the meantime, I was living in a tent. And I figured, well, you know, I still have my weekends and whatnot available, so I went to get my kayak. I brought it up. I bought the spar polyurethane clear coat, and I clear coated my kayak at the campsite. And it worked out rather well. I was a little bit disappointed because the store had guaranteed that it would not yellow. Yet the second that I put a drop of the spar varnish on the ballistic nylon, it yellowed. And I was always really disappointed in that, because I was told, well, you know, you spend $80 to $100 on a gallon of polyurethane. Oh, it's not going to turn anything yellow. Okay, fine, you put it on, and all of a sudden you've got yellow. And the minute you put something on it, I was committed to finishing it. So I was a little bit disappointed. And knowing that I should have taken a piece of scrap material and brought it in to the paint store and said, let's try it, because if it yellows, I wanted a white kayak. I did not want a tobacco stain color kayak, and that's essentially the color it turned. So I was a little bit disappointed in that. Anyway, I finished it off and I put it in the water, and it paddled like a dream. Other than the weather caulking, because it was such a light boat, the wind picked on it. The wind liked to play with it, so it was a bit of a struggle to paddle straight. But I loved it anyway. I really didn't get too much of a chance to paddle it over the next 5 years because I was working all the time. And the biggest headache that I had with that kayak, as much as I loved it, was storing it. It was a massive headache to store that thing. I was living in a trailer in the spring, summer, and fall, and then for the winter I'd go down south to work, and then the following spring I'd come back up north. So carting this thing back and forth where I could store it and finding places for storage was a major headache. This summer I finally learned that it would have fit in my storage unit. I actually had it like on an angle from corner to corner, and it actually just fit. So had I known that, I could have stored it there. I'm already paying for the storage unit. Anyway, too late now. So I paddled it, I enjoyed it, I loved paddling it, and I was very proud of it. I had a lot of people comment on it, all positive comments, a lot of questions about it. I had a lot of fun with that kayak, and I am going to miss having it. I would eventually like to build another. If I do build another one, I want it to accommodate a dog.